warm welcome back to TVB News. Well, despite global oil prices having dropped by more than half since last summer, local petrol prices at the pumps have been lagging behind. Now, those in the transportation sector are hitting back and demanding more transparency from the oil companies. João da Silva has that story.
Since June last year, crude oil prices have plunged by nearly 60%. At petrol stations around Hong Kong, however, prices have been slow to follow suit. And everyday drivers, especially those who do it for a living, have long been feeling the pinch from this mismatch.
If the oil price shoot up, but never come down, but the market is very competitive, they can't purely simply transfer. Let's say Mr. Tam, they are doing the waste collection business, the garbage collection. So if they want to increase the price, it's not as simple as that. They have to go through a lot of process, right? But the oil company, okay, they can just raise it.
Transportation sector legislator Frankie Eek blames a lack of transparency in the oil industry for the mismatch between global crude oil prices and the retail price of fuel products. And he's asking the government to make petrol station operators calculate and disclose their average inventory and sales volume levels.
So once they have an overall average number, let's say in general, everybody is talking about 2 weeks inventory, then we should have some sort of guideline. When the international oil price come down, then definitely the export price from Singapore will come down as well. Then we will have some sort of understanding after 2 weeks, then the retail price should follow, right? But now nobody knows.
Eek also says the government should no longer grant land to gas station operators through open tenders. Instead, he says a fixed price should be set for the land, which would be sold to the operator who manages to sell petrol at the lowest retail price. João da Silva, TVB News.
Speaking on constitutional reform, Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam said today Hong Kong people shouldn't feel a need to pocket it first because the reform proposal isn't so bad. The government has been using the expression to persuade people to support a controversial political reform proposal despite strong opposition to the framework set by the National People's Congress Standing Committee last year. Carrie Lam said last year that even if the final proposal put forward by the government isn't the most ideal, Hong Kong people should still pocket it first. Today, she wanted nothing to do with the government's catchphrase.
The expression seems to suggest that the proposal is actually not too good, but you should still pocket it first. I won't describe this NPCSC decision as well as our proposal as a midway proposal. When we consider Hong Kong's constitutional development, after considering all issues, this is the most pragmatic and practicable option. This as officials in charge of constitutional reform faced lawmakers' questions today. Legislators asked about the second-round public consultation document launched earlier this month, as there is no clarification of how the sectors and subsectors in the nominating committee can be improved on. It's one of the major sticking points of political reform, as many see the nominating committee as a largely pro-establishment body that will follow Beijing's orders to screen out undesirable candidates before they're put to a one-person, one-vote chief executive election in 2017. Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Raymond Tam reiterated the official line that before the government can cut the number of members in certain subsectors, it must first consider the political feasibility. The officials also said they welcome communication with the Pan-Democrats to talk about a way forward in accordance with the basic law and relevant decisions made by the NPCSC. A magistrate ruled today that there is no need for a child protection order for a teenage girl in the chalk flowers case. The 14-year-old was arrested for drawing flowers with chalk on a wall outside the central government offices last month. The girl was represented by Senior Counsel Martin Lee during today's hearing at Tuen Mun Magistracy. Police applied for a child protection order from the court last month after arresting her on suspicion of scribbling graffiti on the so-called Lenin Wall outside government headquarters. Today, the magistrate said she could understand why the police made the application. But after reading a social worker's report, the magistrate ruled that it's not necessary to grant the order at this stage. Earlier, the girl was ordered to be detained pending the social worker's report. However, a High Court judge granted bail to her last month after she spent 2 nights at a children's home.
Turning overseas again, pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine say they have seized control of Donetsk airport after days of intense fighting. The claim contradicts an earlier statement by Ukrainian officials that government troops recaptured most of the Donetsk airport area they had lost to separatists in recent weeks. With attempts to restart peace talks stalled, pro-Russian rebels have stepped up attacks in the past week and casualties have mounted. The United Nations estimates more than 4,700 people have been killed in eastern Ukraine since April.
Thousands of people cheered and waved as Pope Francis boarded a flight back to Rome today after wrapping up his 3-day visit to the Philippines. Crowds lined the roads in the Philippine capital to wave goodbye to the pontiff as he concluded his trip to Asia. His visit culminated with a rain-soaked mass for millions of people in Asia's most populous Catholic nation, the largest ever crowd for a papal event. Vatican officials say between 6 and 7 million people attended Sunday's Mass in Rizal Park. All right, Tony, over to you for sports.
That's right. We begin with some exciting action from the NFL. It'll be Seattle against the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, with the Seahawks becoming the first team in 10 years to defend their crown.
The Seahawks looked finished against the Green Bay Packers towards the end of the NFC Championship final. Trailing 19-7, the Seahawks scored 15 points in 44 seconds late in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson